Hello, Wagwan. Welcome to episode 24 of Design to Win. I'm your host, C. Ruth Taylor, and this is a show where we give you the roadmap to win at life with a little Caribbean flavor. Coming up in today's show, we're going to be looking at mental health, especially in this pandemic and what we can do to win. And my guest today is Mrs. Sheryl Garriques Lloyd. She has been a registered nurse for 20 years with additional studies in psychiatric nursing, nursing administration, and she has a master's degree in nursing education. She has worked at the University Hospital of the West Indies and the Bellevue Hospital for 15 years prior to transitioning to teaching. She currently lectures at the UWI School of Nursing. She is actively involved in her nursing association, International Nursing Honor Society. She's involved in church and the Homeschool Association. I think I'm going to love this interview. More importantly, she's an avid mental health advocate and most recently commenced a mental health blog with her colleagues titled Mind Matters. So welcome to the show, Sheryl.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me, Ruth.
I see we have so much in common there. My mom is a nurse and my sister is a nurse. And my mom did her nursing administration course, I think 2 years ago. So she is a sister at Kingston Public Hospital.
Okay, maybe we should call you over to the nursing side too.
And then you're also a teacher. So we have that in common.
Oh, all right.
Good. So we like to start the interview by asking you, what's your favorite thing about your home country?
My favorite thing about Jamaica, I think I'd have to go with the people. I think we are amazing brand ambassadors for our culture, for our lifestyle, or warmness, or kindness, or creativity. Anywhere you go, somewhere in the world, there's somebody who is Jamaican. So I think we're really great brand ambassadors. Or music, fastest man and woman in the world. So I just have to say the people.
Awesome. I interviewed someone else and they said pretty much the same thing. It's the, the people of Jamaica who make the difference. So talk to us. Based on us reading your bio, you have gone in various, across various levels in nursing. But talk to us about mental health. How did that become a passion of yours?
I think I'd have to say when I started as a registered nurse, I wanted to actually further my studies in midwifery. And then I actually ended up working at Bellevue Hospital. And then I fell in love with mental health. But as I continued to look into it, I found that actually that was mental illness that we were looking at, psychiatry in particular. And what I want to focus on is mental health, as in keeping yourselves mentally healthy. And so I've evolved into wanting to help others to recognize and learn about how to attain their mental health, how to keep it in short order, I guess, to prevent mental illness where possible.
Okay, so can you help us a little bit more with the distinction between mental illness and mental health challenges? What exactly are we dealing with, and what are the differences?
All right. As I looked at the literature, I found actually when you type mental health in, what really comes up is a lot about mental illness. But more recently, as the debate continues, one of the things that has happened is that they have gone ahead to put positive in front of the mental health. So now they're talking about positive mental health will help, which helps to separate it from mental illness. So positive mental health is really looking at developmental and cognitive skills, helping you with learning how to cope. It looks at your well-being and your quality of life, while mental illness is really like a behavioral or a psychological pattern which affects how you think, how you feel, and how you are able to function daily. And also with mental illness, we're talking about the signs and symptoms that are obvious and that needs to be assessed and an actual diagnosis made by a psychiatrist. So there are two different things actually.
Okay, so in layman's terms, if I'm getting this, for you to have a mental illness, that one is formally assessed by the psychiatrist and diagnosed. And so it's more than the inability to cope. Help me a little bit more. How do I know
Yes.
that I'm having mental health challenges and not a mental illness?
All right. So you can be mentally unhealthy, but that doesn't mean you're mentally ill. So let me start with the mental illness. Mental illness, we have several classifications of mental illness. I think one of the ones that most people talk about would be schizophrenia. A lot of people too say I'm depressed, but then clinical depression is an actual diagnosed disorder as well. And so you would have to have all of them have set criteria, signs and symptoms over a specific period of time that you get diagnosed, that you necessarily need to have treatment. It may be medication, it may be therapy, and you need to do all your following up. To be mentally unhealthy means, for instance, that you are not necessarily coping with the challenges you're having, and that comes out in various forms. So, as I like to say to my students sometimes when we're talking about it, if you realize that you're having a stressor or an issue, you're not eating well, or you're eating too much, or you're not sleeping well, or you're sleeping too much, or you're finding ways to escape from what's stressing you and not dealing with it, then chances are your mental health is compromised. And this is something that we can work on resolving that will help to minimize, if you don't address it, going over into mental illness. I don't know if that
Okay.
helps. Mhm.
Yes, it is adding a little bit more clarity to it. So in terms of this global pandemic, what are you seeing in terms of by experience and in the literature? How is this really affecting our mental health? Um, for it's been over a year now. What are you seeing that's happening in terms of the toll it is taking on our mental health?
Um, it is affecting persons, their mental health. It has also affected those who are diagnosed with mental illnesses. So for those mental health challenges that we're seeing in particular, we're looking at persons who are, they're not coping very well. They're having more anxiety episodes. They're having the inability to face the fact that they may have to stay home or that they've lost jobs. And even the virtual work world and the online schooling, it's also affecting our children. In terms of the frontline workers, unfortunately, we've seen an increase in depression and in actual suicide among the healthcare workers as well. It has just really taken a heavy toll on persons' mental health and on the mental illnesses, because for mental illnesses too, there are some persons who have not been able to do their follow-up, who are having a challenge with getting their medication. And as with any health condition, we want to encourage, do your follow-up, go for your visits, take your medication, because really and truly, we would not want anybody to have a relapse or an acute episode. But in a year, as you said, with all the things that have happened in COVID, we are having increases in challenges with mental health and with mental illness.
Wow, so there are people who are really struggling. And since this program is about a design to win, can you give us a design to win in the season if I'm going through the pressures? I'm not seeing my friends. I can't leave home to escape to go to a classroom. The teachers are struggling. The students are struggling. People who even have loved ones in the hospital, they can't visit them. People have lost jobs. Give us a design to win, a roadmap so that we can have positive mental health and win despite what is happening with the pandemic.
All right, I will try my utmost best. So I'd say for persons who are diagnosed with a mental illness, because I want to clearly let it be known that being diagnosed with a mental illness doesn't mean that you are not well and can function. It doesn't mean you can't have mental health. I want to encourage them to ensure that they are going for their follow-up visits with their healthcare practitioners, that they are being compliant with their medications, that they are able to find ways to have relaxation and recreation, that if their management includes psychotherapy, that they are a part of it. It may not be the same if you're doing it on the phone or via Zoom or whatever virtual media, but it's better than not doing it at all. And I want to encourage the persons who are part of the support circle for these persons to ensure that they are there to offer that support. Friends, their families, whoever it is that forms that support around them, I want to encourage them to keep giving that. One of the challenges we have for either is stigma, because stigma prevents a lot of people from reaching out and saying, I need some help. So I want to give us a little roadmap for removing or reducing stigma as well. I want to encourage people, get the facts. There are so much availability of information out there. We're able to click and find. We can call somebody, call me, we can verify. But once you have the facts, share the facts with somebody else, because people are not their diagnosis. And one of the things that we do, for instance, we say the person who's schizophrenic. In healthcare, we've moved away from that. So we say the person with schizophrenia, because the diagnosis is not who the person is. They are still somebody and they're living with a disorder. For mental health and COVID, I think one of the things I want to say most is, if we can, don't get caught up in the news overload. Just select, let's say, a day or every other day, or where you get your news source from, because it needs to be credible. But don't be following every single detail, because the news overload has increased a lot of anxiety. I'd encourage us to follow the protocols, and that does include physical distance. But I've changed the phrase around. Instead of saying socially distance, I like to say physically distance and socially connected. Each one reach one. Just check on somebody, reach out to somebody, send a text, send a voice note, make a video call, because we have that ability. Again, I want to encourage us to stay healthy. Health is tied into everything. So of course, if you're eating better, if you're exercising and so on, it does help your mental health as well. And I also want to say, look at ways you are able to relax or do a little bit of recreation. And one of the things that has happened to a lot of people is that in finding this additional time, they've been able to repurpose, to reorganize, to re-envision. So find something you always wanted to do and just get going and get it done. Look at the things that you thought you didn't have the time for. Look at some of those. Take up some hobbies that are also relaxing. A lot of people have gone into gardening, planting and eating what they grow, writing books. So we have to look at what you can repurpose yourself into doing. And again, we can't underestimate the value of support. So be a part of somebody's circle of support and have some people in your circle to support you.
Those are solid tips, and the eating and the exercising, it really helps, because I have struggled with anxiety a lot, and I try to do 30, at least 30 minutes of walking, and I find also sleep helps when
That is
I'm
correct.
feeling a little stressed. The sleep and what you eat really matters. No, I like the title of, is it your blog? Let me have a look back at your bio. Yes, the health blog about mind matters. Can you get a little bit more into that? What are some of the tips and tricks? What are we going to find when we start reading Mind Matters?
All right. So my colleagues and I at work, we're all interested in mental health in at different areas and aspects of it, and we came together to create this blog called the Mind Matters. So we write together, and we started just last year, and we agreed that the initial sets of blogs would have been about mental health and COVID-19, because the entire blog is about mental health. And so if you should click over and find us, I think all the initial blogs have to do with COVID-19 and resilience, and about finding your mental health and holding on to it, about grieving in a pandemic, because grieving is important to go through for your mental health's sake, about educational adversity, your mental health and COVID. And I think the very last one we wrote was about coming into a new year and the fact that the holidays were a challenging period for a lot of persons. And so as we move forward, we select different topics and how we're going to refocus those on mental health to share the information with anybody who wants to have a look at it. They're free to subscribe and share. We really just want to do a lot of mental health education and promotion and get the information out there that people can actually use it.
I love it. I love it. I want to ask you, you spent 15 years at the Bellevue Hospital. What was that like? And what, if you have any success story to share? So what was that like working in that environment, and any success stories that you can share with us?
Um, well, I started at University Hospital and spent most of my time at Bellevue, but for over 10 years, I'd say what it's like is, if I could sum it up in two sentences, um, what happens to someone who is mentally ill and the way in which it changes you and the behavior, the personality, and everything that comes out. It's always so, for me, it was hard to see, but it was most rewarding when the patients were recovered and you could really see who they were, and that it really is an illness that we need to just help persons to deal with, because once you are stable and you're on your medication and doing everything, there are so many persons who are functioning and are productive and a part of society. If they didn't even tell you, maybe you wouldn't even know they have a diagnosis. So that's been wonderful for me. Transitioning, I really have to say I miss my patients, because I can also tell you there was never a day when there wasn't something that was there to laugh with and about that's therapeutic. Success stories, I have several. You know, while in healthcare, they normally tell you don't get close to your patients necessarily. It's hard not to get closer, because we have to work with them closely over an extended period of time. And I've had several patients who have gone on to be discharged, who have actually never come back, a couple who struggled, and they are now much better. I have a few young ladies who I've had in the time frame I was there, who we are still in touch, and they are doing awesomely well and are working, they are studied, they are mothers. And maybe my biggest success story would be my oldest child. I met her at Bellevue, and she has gone on to be discharged from Bellevue years ago. I actually took her to live with me, and she is now doing awesomely well on her own in society, has never looked back, and she's quite fine.
Wow, I love it. I love it. I love it. Because we need those. Uh, Having mental health challenges or going through a mental illness doesn't mean it's the end of the world. And I ask because this is something dear to me. I have had mental health challenges with my background as a teenager, struggling with depression and suicide ideation. And I've had students, and there's one particular student that is so brilliant, and I don't think he fully recovered or came back to himself. So this is very dear to me. But I also have another friend who, she had mental health challenges and went through a period of mental illness. At one stage, she almost harmed her own children. And today she's a respectable member of society, getting honorary doctorate, went to the White House. She's an author. So I just want to give persons hope that if you have family members going through mental health issues or mental illness, don't give up. Everybody doesn't have to end up on the street. And so I want, as we wrap up the show, talk to the caregivers, talk to the husbands, the wives, the children of persons either with mental health challenges or mental illness. Talk to them and give them a sense of hope in this season.
I want to say to them that I can understand how it is and how challenging it can be, because one of the challenges we can have is that many persons are not willing to step forward and ask for the help because of stigma. Again, you don't want people to know you need to ask for help for mental health. And two, because a lot of persons who do end up being diagnosed with mental illness, they have what we call lack of insight, and they're not able to see that something is wrong with them, and that's a trick of the mind. However, I want to encourage all our caregivers, all our family, all our friends who are the support. More than anything else, they do need that support. Depending on what the diagnosis is, we look at things like there are boundaries we have to set, there are conditions we have to work with, but ultimately we want to encourage each person to be the best of them that they can be. And we offer the support to get them to be that way. If somebody had diabetes, we'd encourage them to walk with a non-sugar sweet, just in case the sugar goes down, to eat right, to exercise, to take their medication. We want the same thing for mental health. So we want to encourage you to encourage that person to be the best they can be. But I also want to say, remember yourselves and your self-care, because it is in taking care of yourself that you're able to offer that support. Take a break if you need it. Have a group if you can. So let's take turns so that you're not the only one who is dealing with the issues at a time. There are support groups for caregivers. In particular at Bellevue, I know we have a session every fourth Saturday by the social work department, and that's really for caregivers, so they're able to talk, to get some support themselves. If you need help too and you need to talk to a counselor or somebody, go ahead and talk, because it is heavy. But again, I'm going to agree with Ruth that hope is not lost. And for those persons who are maybe like us, who are Christian minded, we ask you to pray, but remember that prayer requires action as well. So learn about the disorder, learn about the medication, learn about things that can help them, like exercising and what they eat, and how to be involved in something recreational that can also be productive. Sometimes we push them into school where maybe they're better at doing a skill and using it to be productive. So I'm not discrediting school, but some persons want to do hands-on. Let's help them with that too. And while you're doing that, you will learn more about yourself, how you feel about it, what can you contribute, and ensuring that both of you, as the client and as the caregiver, are being your optimal selves, so you don't lose your mental health as well.
Awesome. I love it. There's something, as we close out the show, there's something that you always say. I think it is,
There's no good health without good mental health. That's my everyday and my always saying, because I don't think we give enough credit to mental health, but I want to just let everybody know
Can
there's
you
no good
say it
health.
again, loud
There's
and
no
clear?
good health without good mental health.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. This has been very educational and inspirational. And we want to thank you for coming. So, where can we find out more about you and what you do?
I lecture at the UWI School of Nursing, Mona, but you can find me on social media as well. I do have a Facebook page. I am also on Instagram. I'm also on Twitter. Sheryl Garriques Lloyd. You can just check by my name. And I also have a mental health Instagram page, which is My Mental Health 101.
Right, so go check out My Mental Health 101. And as we close out the show, put your hand over your heart and say with me our pledge. There's greatness in me. It's possible to live my dreams. No matter how bad it is or how bad it gets, I'm going to make it. With faith, courage, and consistent action, I'm going to make it. It's
I'm
not
going to
over
make it.
until I win. This is Ruth Taylor saying, ta for now, until next time.